Hello, Vanguard, Wolfe says. The other woman stares, blade still held to the throat of the momentarily forgotten Raven Kai. And she says, Havoc, it's really you. In the flesh, Wolfe says, offering a sardonic smile. Of course in the flesh, Vanguard snaps. You never had a spiritual bone in your body. The smile slips as Wolfe realizes Vanguard isn't happy to see her. No, why would she be? After all, it was Havoc who left. Havoc who abandoned the others. She says, What are you doing here on Scirocco Station? Is the rest of the team here? Vanguard's face solidifies into iron. No, she says. The team isn't here. Wolfe knows there's something terrible she isn't saying. Why else would Vanguard be in Hamshal territory? She looks from Vanguard to Raven and says, Why are you holding my friend captive? I was looking for you, she says. Though I didn't know it was you, I was sent to find out what the Radiant Council is doing here. How are you involved? Wolfe frowns. Why would the collective care about the Radiant Council? Vanguard's face hardens more and she presses the blade to Raven's throat. Have you been helping the Radiant Council build weapons? What? No, Wolfe says. I'm trying to help Dr. Winter generate a power source for the station. Scirocco is losing power, and if we don't come up with a solution soon, it's going to fall out of the sky and crash onto Iris. Now, please, let Raven go. They don't have any part in this. Vanguard studies her and says, It doesn't matter. The Radiant Council's course has been corrected. Wolfe shakes her head and says, I don't understand what's happening here, Van. Is Verdot making a play for this sector? Why are you here? Where's the rest of the team? This isn't the kind of work we did. Vanguard releases Raven and takes 3 steps forward, pressing the tip of her blade to Wolfe's sternum. I work for the Phantoms of the Azure Court now. You helped the Radiant Council, so now I have to decide what to do with you. What happened to the team? Wolfe finally asks the right question. Dead, Vanguard says, mask starting to slip as tears well in her eyes. Because of you. Wolfe's heart stutters and her breath catches. Hex? Longdraw? Sly? What? The blade rises to her throat and presses into her skin. Don't say their names, Vanguard says through gritted teeth. You lost that right when you ditched us, but it all comes full circle. She releases the pressure on Wolfe's neck and steps back a pace. Draw your iron, Havoc. Let's finish this. Wolfe raises her hands and says, I'm not going to fight you, Van. I'm a healer now. If you were a healer, you wouldn't still be carrying Deathmaker. Now draw. I'm sorry for leaving. I'm sorry for abandoning the team, but the collective was going to use that AI we stole to start a war. And I was just so tired of fighting. I couldn't be sure that you all wouldn't try to stop me. I'm sorry. Vanguard shakes her head and wipes away tears. Too late, Havoc. It's just you and me now, and I will avenge the teammates you abandoned, or be the last to fall by your treachery. Vanguard, I won't fight you. Then I'm gonna kill your friend first, and then you. Now draw your iron, and by ghost light, let's dance. Welcome back for another episode of Errant Adventures, the solo actual play podcast where stories are told at the speed of dice. With me, Steve Morrison, your game master and solo player. Now come on, let's grab the dice and see where our story goes. Welcome back for episode 6 of season 3, Cry Havoc. Last time, in Dr. Winter's office, Wolfe promises to help find out what's going on, but unfortunately Dr. Winter doesn't give any indication of what is wrong. Wolfe leaves Dr. Winter's office and returns to Raven's apartment, not realizing that they are missing. She does some research into the Radiant Council and the Phantoms of the Azure Court and discovers that the Azure Court is tied to Clan Hamshal. Armed with that knowledge, she warns Valkyrie to be on the lookout and prep the ship just in case Hamshal comes knocking. Val informs her of two things. An Azure Court ship has arrived with soldiers, and there is a dead zone on level 2 in one of the living quarters that Val cannot scan. That wasn't present when they arrived. Wolfe asks Val to prepare the ship and contact Raven to let them know she's leaving. But Val cannot find her on the station. Wolfe realizes someone has already gotten to Raven, and she decides she has to investigate the dead zone because that's most likely where they are. She arrives, breaks into the apartment, and comes face to face with an old friend, a woman that we know as Kiana Arden, but whom Wolfe knows as Vanguard. Vanguard recognizes her and calls her Havoc. And that is where we left off. And as we begin this episode, we've got some stuff to talk about because currently Wolfe and Kiana Arden are facing off. Kiana Arden, or Vanguard, has her sword raised in Wolfe's direction. Wolfe's hands are still up. She has not drawn her blade yet. But Vanguard has issued a challenge. Vanguard has sworn maybe her own iron vow to avenge the deaths of their former teammates. And in order to fulfill that vow, she has to fight and kill her old friend Havoc. For Wolfe's part of it, she has no desire to fight Vanguard. And that is for two reasons. One, because she is fairly confident that she is still a better fighter than Vanguard was, and that if they actually go toe-to-toe and fight, it's very possible that Wolfe would kill her old friend. And she doesn't understand what happened to her old team or why Vanguard blames her for their deaths, but she certainly does not want to have her friend's blood on her hands. But also, she wants to get Raven out of here because it certainly seems, based on Vanguard's words, that if Wolfe doesn't fight back, she's going to kill Raven and then kill Wolfe. And Wolfe just can't allow that. So I think we're about to enter the fray. And as part of that, I want to set up our progress track here. Since we are looking at this from Wolfe's perspective, her goal here, her objective, is not to kill Vanguard. She is not here to destroy her old friend. So I think we are going to outline her objective as rescue Raven and escape the fight with Vanguard. Now, Vanguard is no slouch with a blade, so I don't think troublesome makes sense here. I'm not even sure that dangerous makes sense, because in order for Wolfe to fend off the incredibly angry Vanguard, she's going to have to fight honestly. So I think I'm going to go with a formidable rank here. That feels about right for the challenge, both of the objective and just the difficulty of this fight in general. I think that there are some other pieces of information that Wolfe has gleaned from this conversation with Kiana Arden, but I don't think that that is first and foremost in her mind at the moment. I think her first instinct here is that she is going to have to fight her friend and fight to win, even if her win state is not Vanguard's death. So I think we should get ready to roll Enter the Fray. Since this is facing off against your foe, we're going to roll plus heart here. I think that makes the most sense, even though it would be more advantageous for Wolfe to roll in the thick of it at close quarters, because they are at close quarters. That would be plus iron. I think it makes more narrative sense to roll plus heart, because this interaction with Vanguard has very much gone to her heart. She may have mechanically a heart of one, but I don't think that means that she didn't care about her former teammates. And so coming face to face with the last survivor of her old team has definitely put her on the back foot, and she is not trying to take the advantage and strike as dangerously as she might in a duel if all things were equal. So I think heart makes sense here because she is a little bit on the back foot. She is facing off against her foe, but she is not trying to push an advantage and rush in and strike. She is very much staying back. So let's roll our d6 plus 1 and see what our challenge dice do to us. 4 for the action score, 4 and a 1 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. So on Enter the Fray, with a weak hit, I can either take +2 momentum or I can choose to be in control. I feel like, based on the situation that I have set up, it would be unfair of me to seize the initiative. I think Wolfe has not fought someone like this in probably a year. And so she's a little rusty, even though she was an incredible blade master in the past. And so I'm going to take the momentum, and she's going to start in a bad spot. Let's envision this. They're facing off. Vanguard's blade is raised and pressed in Wolfe's direction. She says this about dancing the dance of death by the ghost light, and Wolfe takes a breath, steps back, reaches down to Deathmaker, her iron blade, and draws it out with a quick motion. But as soon as she stepped back, I think Vanguard knew that the fight was on, and so she comes charging in to press the advantage. And Wolfe barely gets her sword out of the scabbard before Vanguard is on her, and she raises her blade to block the first blow and is forced back another step. Again, they're in a small living room of this apartment, and there is an open seating area where there's like a couch, there is some sort of entertainment screen on the wall. Maybe there's even like a small end table or a small like coffee table. And I think Wolfe, backing up, her calves bump up against this coffee table, and she realizes that she doesn't have much space to move. So I think she is going to kick back with her leg, try to kick that coffee table away to create a little bit more space in this area. And she is going to try and react under fire here. And I'm going to do this with edge because I think this involves maneuvering and trying to get into a better position. So this will be +2 on this. Oof. 3 on the action score, 6 and a 7 on the challenge dice for a miss. On a miss, the situation worsens, you stay in a bad spot, and must pay the price. So I guess we should talk about paying the price. Let's roll on it. 33. Something of value is lost or destroyed. I think the obvious answer here, the thing that jumped immediately out to me, is her sword. Now, I don't think her sword is destroyed because that would severely hamper her in this fight, and I don't think we're there yet. But I think what happens is she kicks back with her foot, she knocks this table away, and she is taking another step back as Vanguard swings down in an overhand chop, and Wolfe raises the blade, blocks it, knocks it to the side, and then is about to make her own swing. But Vanguard reacts quickly to that parry and knocks the blade and it slaps a little bit against Wolfe's wrist, and the sword scatters across the room over that couch and onto the other side, maybe into this small dining room, and slides under a table. And all of a sudden, Wolfe is now standing here disarmed face to face with her old friend. And Vanguard looks at her with murder in her eyes and prepares to strike. And I think as Vanguard stabs forward with the blade to thrust it through Wolfe's chest, Wolfe sidesteps and knocks at it with one of her arms, and she is underneath her coat wearing metal bracers, and she is able to, well, we'll see how well she's able to block this. So this will be reacting under fire. This is going to be iron this time, as she is blocking or diverting with force. So this will be +3 on this as she tries to deflect the blade with her metal bracers, or iron bracers, we should even go so far as to say. 8 on the action score, a 7 and a 4 on the challenge dice for a strong hit. So on a strong hit, we are successful, we gain control, and we take +1 momentum. So momentum goes up to 6, and I think what this looks like is Wolfe deflects the stab and then takes a moment to basically kick out with her foot and kick out the knee of Vanguard, who buckles to the ground and sort of rolls forward and away. Now, obviously, Wolfe doesn't have her sword in her hand to follow up with this blow. So I think she is immediately going to turn and run for the sword and kind of vault over the couch and dive under the table for her iron blade. And again, we're going to do that with gain ground plus edge. So this will be +2 on this. Here we go. 8 on the action score, an 8 and a 10 on the challenge dice for a miss. So on a miss, your foe gains the upper hand, the fight moves to a new location, or you encounter a new peril. You are in a bad spot and must pay the price. Okay, let's think about this. So Wolfe vaults over the couch and dives for the sword. And I think Vanguard, who rolled away from, kind of getting her knee kicked out, she jumps up on her feet and pursues Wolfe and is right on her heels. And as Wolfe sort of dives under the table for the sword, Vanguard kicks one of those chairs that is at that table, and it actually slips under the table and knocks the sword further away, slamming into Wolfe's side. Let's roll for pay the price here. 20. A surprising development complicates your quest. I think that chair and the sword, it probably knocks the table a little bit as well, and maybe it knocks it into the wall. And these chairs are kind of simple metal chairs, and maybe one of those chairs punches through the wall, and unfortunately, that spot that it punches through the wall is where some of the electrical cables run, and it begins to shoot off sparks, and the lights begin to flick in and out as power is fluctuating in and out inside this room. And Wolfe is squinting, trying to see where her sword is, but also she is essentially on her stomach with Vanguard standing over her. And once again, Vanguard is going to draw her sword up and try to stab it down through Wolfe. And I think Wolfe is going to, I think we're going to react under fire here, and she is going to change up the plan, try to cleverly bypass an obstacle. She rolls over, grabs that chair that battered her in the side, and she rolls over with it to block the blade as it comes down as we roll plus wits. It's be +2 on this react under fire. 6 on the action score, 5 and a 10 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. So avoid the worst of the danger or overcome the obstacle, but not without a cost. Make a suffer move at -1. Okay, so I have 3 health, 2 spirit, and 1 supply currently. I don't think supply makes sense. I feel like spirit makes sense here, as it is a very stressful moment as she tries to interpose this metal chair between herself and the sword that is coming down. The blade is coming straight down at her, so I think it's one of these where she rolls over, she catches the blade between the legs of the chair, and then kind of twists to redirect it, and I think that throws Vanguard off balance a little bit, but it is a near miss as the blade stabs into the floor of this dining room, and Wolfe tries to scramble up and away from Vanguard in this moment as Vanguard is untangling from the chair. Again, we'll react under fire with edge. +2 on this, 8 on the action score, 6 and a 5 on the challenge dice for a strong hit. Gives us another momentum, and we are back in control. So Wolfe gets to her feet, but even though she is successful here, she hasn't really created much space between herself and Vanguard, as Vanguard is pulling her sword out from the wreckage of this chair and turning. I think Wolfe says, "Vanguard, please, we don't have to do this. I don't want to fight you." And I think Vanguard says, "Too bad, Havoc. This fight has been a year coming." And she closes in. Now, I think Wolfe here is going to try to seize this control of the situation, and she's actually going to step in close so that the sword is not as effective, and she is going to try and punch Vanguard in the throat to try and distract her a little bit and to disable her. So actually, we're going to step forward and strike. So when you're in control and assault a foe at close quarters, roll +iron. Wolfe steps in, she throws a right jab right into Vanguard's throat. +3 here. 9 on the action score, a 9 and a 4 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. So on a weak hit, mark progress twice, but expose yourself to danger. You're in a bad spot. So I think we're going to mark our progress track here. It is a formidable fight, so we mark 2 boxes of progress in this. She does hit Vanguard close to the throat. It's actually closer to her sternum, and it knocks Vanguard back a couple steps, and she's sort of like wheezing a little bit from the blow, but it is not enough to disable her, and Vanguard then lowers her blade and extends it out, now utilizing the reach that she has with the sword, and she is going to come in and strike once again at Wolfe. Now, Wolfe is going to, in this case, stand her ground and clash. She is going to try and deflect the blade once again with one of her bracers, and then give a quick kidney punch to Vanguard. Let's see how it goes. 8 on the action score, a 7 and a 1 on the challenge dice for a strong hit. So we're going to mark progress twice and take back control of the fight. So we're up to 4 boxes of progress as that exact thing happens. The sword stabs in, Wolfe deflects it with her gauntlet, and then just quick 1-2 punch to the side. I think Vanguard gasps a little bit of like, ugh, as the fist comes in, and she's holding her side, maybe even one of the ribs cracked a little bit, as Wolfe follows that up with another 1-2 to the face to try and just knock her out cold. And this is going to be another strike. +iron. Here we go. 7 on the action die, a 5 and a 1 on the challenge dice for a strong hit. So with another strong hit, mark progress twice and remain in control. So we are up to 6 boxes of progress on this as Wolfe now steps forward. I think maybe she even has a moment where she traps the sword under her arm, and she's holding in Vanguard close, and she's just taking her elbow and just smashing it into the other woman's face. And Vanguard takes the first blow and then tries to like lower her head and absorb the second blow on her skull instead of on her face. And they're just, the two of them are struggling for a moment. And I think at this point, I feel like this is working. So Wolfe doesn't really have any reason not to continue. So I think she's going to try and then sort of slip around behind Vanguard and get her into a chokehold to try and knock her out. And this is going to be another strike. Plus iron. Well, the dice finally turned against us, as I've got a 5 on the action score and 2 8s on the challenge dice for a miss with a match. So the fight turns against you. You are in a bad spot and must pay the price. We also have a match to play with. So I think what this looks like is Wolfe lets go of the sword to slip around to get into a chokehold. And as she does that, well, let's roll on pay the price first. 96. Roll twice. That seems appropriate. 3. An individual or community you care about is exposed to danger. Okay, that's easy. And the other one is going to be 70. You waste resources. Okay, so we've got an individual you care about is exposed to danger, and you waste resources. Okay, so I think what this looks like is Wolfe slips around and is trying to get her into a chokehold, but Vanguard gets one arm up and is holding Wolfe back from actually getting a full chokehold as Vanguard lets go of her sword, which is good, and then draws her laser pistol and fires it at Raven. Raven is in danger of getting shot, and Wolfe is going to have to react to this in some way. But also, we waste resources. Now, we have a supply of 1. I'm not sure what wasting resources in this case looks like in this fight. So I think I'm actually going to, instead of going with the waste resources roll, I'm just going to knock down to the next result on that table, which is you are harmed, which I feel like is a much more appropriate thing in a fight like this. And so there is going to be some harm dealt to Wolfe. And I think what this looks like is Wolfe realizing that Vanguard is intending to shoot Raven with her pistol is going to throw her weight back and pull Vanguard down to the ground. But in so doing, she loses hold of that chokehold, and the laser pistol goes off, and a bolt goes flying through the air. And I think we will resolve in a moment whether or not that actually hits Raven. Because here's the thing, we got a miss with a match on that. So I think there is a possibility that that still hits Raven, even though Wolfe is trying to avoid it. And as they're falling and the chokehold gives way, Vanguard is able to reach down with her other hand, draw out a dagger at her side, and then stab back behind her. And that punches into Wolfe's abdomen, and she kind of as the blade stabs through. And I'm going to take 2 harm for that. I feel like 2 harm feels pretty appropriate for that bit of pain. And let's ask the Oracle, what do we think our chances are that this laser bolt hits Raven, even with Wolfe's attempt to avoid it? I think that if we were just dealing with a complication, I would say that there was a small chance. But I think because we got a miss with a match and it was 2 8s, which is pretty bad, I think it's still likely that this laser bolt is going to hit. And so 75 or less will be a yes. 27 is definitely a yes. So let's just keep in mind, we don't know how bad it is yet, but I think Wolfe, as she hits the ground and the blade comes out and stabs her in the side, she hears Raven cry out. And all of a sudden, things are not looking so great for Alexis Wolfe as Vanguard quickly rolls off of her and gets up to her knees and takes that blade up again and is going to stab down with all of her might to try and drive it through Wolfe's throat. Wolfe will react under fire, this time with iron as she is blocking or diverting the force. She is trying to cross her arms and block the downward blow of this knife and save her life. We've got a 7 on the action score, a 7 and a 4 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. So on a weak hit, she successfully is able to deflect the blow, but there is a complication, must make a suffer move. Oh boy. Okay, so I'm currently sitting at 1 health, 1 spirit, and 1 supply. This is a tough choice because any of these could be a bad choice here. I could also lose a momentum, but that doesn't feel as visceral as a fight like this. So I think with the idea that Raven also got hit and Wolfe has that in the back of her mind, even as she's fighting for her life, I'm going to take that hit to spirit as we drop down to 0 spirit. And I think at this point we have to go to the endure stress move, because if your spirit is 0, you must roll spirit or heart, whichever is higher, and then something happens. So this could go really poorly because my heart is only 1. So here we go. We're going to endure some stress. 5 for the action score, 7 and a 10 on the challenge dice for a miss. On a miss, it's worse than you thought. Suffer an additional -1 spirit or lose 2 momentum. If your spirit is 0, you must also mark shaken or traumatized or roll on the table below. Oh boy. So I'm going to mark shaken. I don't know that I've ever marked an impact before. This is pretty cool. So we're going to mark shaken as she hears Raven cry out, and I think Wolfe blocks the downward blow with her hands, with her bracers, and she's holding up the knife and she's straining against Vanguard, who is now leaned over and is trying to press the blade down. And Wolfe calls out and is like, Raven, are you okay? I'll be there in a minute. Please, Vanguard, we don't have to do this. Please, don't do this. And she is struggling against the weight of this blade that is closing in on her throat. And Wolfe is going to clash. She's going to try and lash out with her knee and try to hit that same spot that she punched earlier where the rib cracked, and see if she can dislodge Vanguard. So plus iron, plus 3 on this. Here we go. Yes. 8 on the action score, 2 and a 1 on the challenge dice for a strong hit. Mark progress twice and take control. Bleeding, she draws up her knee in a quick, vicious movement, and it cracks against Vanguard's ribcage, and there is an audible pop as a couple of those ribs give way, and I think Vanguard cries out and then topples over to the side as Wolfe throws her off. And then I think in a just haze of sort of delirium and confusion, she is going to roll over on her side. She is going to then straddle on top of Vanguard. And as she pummels down, trying to knock her into unconsciousness, at this point, Wolfe is weeping and she's saying, I'm sorry, as she just slams down into her friend's face. And I think it is time to take decisive action and finish this fight. So I've got 8 progress. I'm going to roll 2d10. Let's hope for a good roll. Yes, okay. We got a 7 and a 2 on the challenge dice for a strong hit. On a strong hit, you prevail. Take +1 momentum. If any objectives remain and the fight continues, you are in control. No objectives remain. Our momentum moves up to 8. And I think what happens is 1, 2, 3 strikes and Vanguard is clearly unconscious. Wolfe staggers up and is holding her bleeding side as she looks over to Raven. This apartment is a mess. I mean, it's utterly destroyed. There's furniture cast around. There are marks from the blades flying around. And she hurries over to Raven to check on them. Is Raven okay? Is Raven alive? Did that laser bolt hit and kill them? Let's ask the Oracle. I think it is unlikely that she is dead. I think because Wolfe sacrificed part of her body to try and prevent that, I think it is unlikely. 25 or less will be a yes. 76. 76 is a no. So Raven is sitting there, their eyes are sort of screwed up, and there are tears coming out, and there is a burn mark in their shoulder, but otherwise they are alive. Wolfe sort of hugs them and says, I'm glad you're okay. We've got to get out of here. We got to get out of here fast. And she goes over to where her sword has been discarded. She picks it up and returns. She cuts the bonds that are holding Raven onto this chair and helps them to their feet. She starts to move and then stops for a moment. And she says, Raven, do you need me to look at that wound now? And I think Raven, who is holding their shoulder, shakes their head and says, no, I'm okay. I've had burns before. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. And they are about to leave the room when I think Vanguard groans and there is this sickening gurgling sound that comes from her throat. And Wolfe stops and turns back and looks down at her friend, and there's blood pouring down from a broken nose. She's clearly foaming at the mouth a little bit. And Wolfe says, I can't leave it like this. And she lets go of Raven, turns back, and crouches down beside Vanguard. She reaches into a pouch strapped to the side of her belt and begins pulling out materials. And she is going to attempt to provide care. This will be rolling plus wits, which is +2. And she gets a +1 because she is a healer. Here we go. 6 on the action score, a 10 and a 2 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. So on a weak hit, as above, but recovery costs extra time or resources. Choose one. Lose momentum or sacrifice resources. Well, I've only got a supply of 1, so if I sacrifice resources, it's going to get real bad. So I think I'm going to lose 2 momentum. That's going to take us down to 6 momentum. Now, because I am treating someone other than myself, I get to take +1 spirit or +1 momentum on a hit. But here is the question, because I've never had an impact before. Wolfe is shaken, and I believe that means that she is unable to take spirit until she clears that impact. Let's look it up real quick. Yep, it says here in the rulebook, if you are wounded, shaken, or unprepared, you cannot increase the associated condition meter. So you have to clear it with the appropriate recover move, and then you can start adding things back to that track. So currently, Wolfe is pretty dispirited. Makes sense. She thought her friend died. She was almost forced to murder another friend that she definitely feels like she abandoned, and who apparently her old team all died because of her. She doesn't know what that means. So she cannot take +1 spirit for treating someone else, but she can take a momentum. So she lost 2, but she gained 1 back. So she is sitting at 7 momentum as she does some quick medical work on Vanguard, stabilizes her, and injects her with some full spectrum antibiotics and some, stuff to help her heal. And then she rolls her over onto her side and sort of props her up so that she doesn't choke on her own vomit. And then once that is done, and yes, she is still bleeding from her side. I think in the process of treating Vanguard, she has wrapped a bandage quickly around her abdomen to try and staunch the bleeding a little bit. She's going to stand, return to Raven, and leave the room. As they are hobbling down the hallway, Wolfe activates her comm and says, Valkyrie, can you hear me? Yes, Wolfe. You are coming through clearly. Is everything all right? No, it is not all right at all. But I've got Raven, and we are coming to the docking bay. I need you to do me a favor, and I need you to make sure that we have a clear path. If we run into any of those Azure Court soldiers, we're in trouble. Raven says, what do you mean we're leaving the station? I can't leave the station. We have to go to the med bay. And Wolfe shakes her head and says, I'm sorry, we cannot stay here. I don't know who or what she's become, but she works for the Phantoms of the Azure Court now. And there are Azure Court soldiers on the station. And you and I are both in danger from them, especially after she wakes up. Raven says, yeah, why did you help her? You could have just left her there and it wouldn't have been your fault. Wolfe says, it's a long story, Raven, and I don't know that I can tell most of it, but it is my fault. Apparently, it's all my fault. And if what she says is true and the rest of my old friends are dead, even if she hates me, even if she wants to kill me, and I'm sure she does after that beating I gave her, I couldn't let her go like that. She deserves better. They all did. And they are going to make their way to the docking bay. Now, we've got a little bit of bookkeeping to do before we close out this episode. We have an ongoing vow that's troublesome, that is, find out what's going on with Dr. Winter and help out. Here's the thing. Wolfe is correct. She has to get off of this station. She's not going to be able to face off against these soldiers of the Phantoms of the Azure Court in her state. She needs to get away, find some place to recover and rest. So I guess the question is, are we forsaking this vow? I mean, that is a very terrible thing to do in the Forge. Maybe, but I don't think so. I don't think that Wolfe has given up on helping Dr. Winter, but she's got to get away for now. So what I'm going to do is I am going to upgrade the difficulty of this vow, and it is no longer troublesome to find out what's going on with Dr. Winter and help out. I think it is now formidable. We're going to jump it up 2 levels because the Azure Court is taking control of this station, and Wolfe has to get away, recover, and then try to probably sneak back aboard. So we're going to upgrade that to formidable, but I am going to mark a box of progress because Wolfe now has a little bit better idea of what's going on with Dr. Winter. Probably. She was being coerced by Vanguard. We've got 1 box of progress on that vow, and Alexis, Wolfe, and Raven are making their way to the docking bay. Now, we could roll on Ask the Oracle to determine if they run into trouble, but I think it makes sense to set a course instead. Because this is now perilous space, because they could run into soldiers from the Azure Court. So we're going to roll plus supply as we set a course to the docking bay through the hallways, the twisting hallways of Scirocco Station. So we'll roll +1 and hope for a good roll. 4 on the action score, a 7 and an 8 on the challenge dice is a miss. You're waylaid by a significant threat and must pay the price. If you overcome this obstacle, you may push on safely to your destination. Let's see what our pay the price says. 60. Your equipment or vehicle malfunctions. So let's envision this. They're struggling through the hallways on Scirocco Station, and Wolfe looks a mess, and Raven doesn't look much better. And they definitely pass some people who give them the side eye and are probably wonder what is going on. But for the most part, Scirocco Station is, I think, probably a small enough station that Raven at least is recognizable. And after Wolfe's healing and helping the station with its illness within the last week, is probably also fairly recognizable. And I think there are a couple of people on the station that come over to them and are like, what's happening? What's going on? And Raven says, it's all right. It's okay. We're okay. But we have to get to the docking bay. The Azure Court, well, they're causing problems. We have to get to the docking bay and we have to get out of here. And I think those people that they interact with look at each other and nod and say, okay, we'll help you. And so they help Wolfe and Raven reach the docking bay. They arrive at the docking bay, and the Dead Reckoning is sitting on its landing pad, right where Wolfe left it earlier today. I mean, she's had a long day. She got back from the planet Iris after only getting like 3-4 hours of sleep. And then the whole thing happened in the Radiant Council, and then now this duel with an old friend, and she's battered and beaten and broken and just hurt, and everything is terrible. And they see the Dead Reckoning, and for a moment, Wolfe feels this hope, this moment of escape. And then as they are passing through the entryway to the docking bay, Valkyrie comes over the comm channel and says, Wolfe, do not approach the ship. Scirocco Station has placed us under lockdown, and I cannot override it. The ship is not going anywhere, Wolfe. And there are Azure Court soldiers closing in on this position as we speak. Run, Wolfe. Run while you can. Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures, and thanks so much to Syrinscape for the lovely ambient sounds and music throughout the episode. If you enjoyed the show, please spread the word, and if you want to support the show directly, leave me a review or buy me a coffee at ko-fi.com/errantadventures. If you want to interact with me, I'm at Errant Solo Pod on Twitter and Instagram, or you can email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. I also post campaign-related materials on my website, errantadventurespod.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.